I would just say subscribe, though. Just hit subscribe right now. Welcome back. You are listening to D3 Datacast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Be sure to like the video and subscribe if you have not already. And with that, I would like to welcome in my co-host for the episode, Zach Snyder.
Matt, it's great. It's always great to start a new episode. We are able to greet each other, but it's at this time I think that we need to formally introduce the third official member of the D3 Datacast. People who have followed us on Twitter have already seen the reveal of the third member of the D3 Datacast, Matt, and that of course is Hoops. Hoops is the official mascot of the D3 Datacast. My daughter, your niece, came to me and said, "Dad, does your YouTube have a mascot?" And I said, "Well, we have Uncle Matt." And she said, "I'm going to make you one." And I didn't think of anything of it. She went off and she came back and she showed me Hoops. And I said, "You know what? That's perfect." And so we went into an executive session, Matt. I presented Hoops to you. We deliberated and we said, yeah, we're going to adopt Hoops as an official member of the D3 Datacast. And not only that, Matt, we have a brand new line of merchandise featuring none other than Hoops. Available for the first time, D3 Datacast merchandise available in youth sizes. And Matt, so the merch store is something we launched last year about this time, right? It was an off-season project for us. And not that we've ever priced anything there to like really, earn some support or whatever. It's not priced to be a moneymaker for us necessarily. But Matt, we've launched the Hoops line at an even lower price point than our other stuff. Very exciting. Very exciting times for the D3 Datacast. Our branding has gone to the next level. I don't even know what to say. Matt, and another special item here that we have new for this year. Sometimes I think people, we try to get about D3 Hoops, right? We've been to Fort Wayne. We've been into, the DeVos Fieldhouse of all places. And I think sometimes people may be scared to talk with us. But as a way to encourage people to reach out to us, talk to us in D3 gyms, we have a very special Hoops sticker here that, at least for the time being, I think, Matt, is going to be exclusively available to people who meet us in person. So be on the lookout for us in a D3 gym near you and say, hey, we don't care about YouTube, but we love Hoops. Give me that D3 Datacast Hoops sticker, and we'd be happy to give you one.
A lot of stuff to react to, Zach. First of all, I love Hoops. I think Hoops as a design, as a character, perfectly captures the seriousness of our show and the professionalism of our show. I think that's great. Love to see the Hoops merch out there. I want to see people rocking the Hoops D3 Datacast stuff all throughout Division III basketball arenas, and the stickers as a giveaway. I know we're going to be at Fort Wayne at the end of the year, as we have for this will be our fourth year in a row, third as D3 media YouTubers. We're going to be at the Great Lakes Invitational here in Grand Rapids, where I live. And we're going to be at the SICMA Invitational at Illinois Wesleyan. So we're going to be around the country a few times this season. So hopefully we'll see some people. And if you're fortunate enough to be in a gym with us, say hi, and hopefully you can snag one of your Hoop stickers. And I'm sure that's going to be the highlight of your season, to grab one of those.
Clearly. All right, Matt, that's a lot of fun. But we also have a very fun episode planned for today. A perfect off-season topic. And actually, Matt, we should mention this is our last off-season show, right? As of this show, we've made it through the off-season, right? The next time that we come back, we're going to be heading into season mode. Like, this will be our September episode, and we'll say we're done with the off-season. Once October hits, we go in season. So we've made it. We've made it.
Students, I think in some institutions, have maybe started classes already, or they're moving in maybe this week in preparation for classes to start right after Labor Day. So we're basically here. Fall term is in session just about. So that basically means D3 basketball season is upon us. I know we got like football season to get through, but also like for us, D3 basketball season is year round. So once the fall hits, you're like almost there.
All right, so what better way to head into a new season than to talk about every season that's taken place in Division III up until now in the form of the top 10 men's basketball programs of all time throughout Division III history. Now, Matt, this is we're doing this having taken inspiration from something that was produced on CBSSports.com in about November of 2020. They did this same exact exercise for the Division I landscape. And so we took their criteria and applied it to Division III. And so let's just kind of go through the different ways that programs can earn points, Matt. Of course, starting with an NCAA tournament championship is worth 20 points. A Final Four appearance without a national title gets you 10 points. Elite Eights without making the Final Four is worth 3 points. A Sweet 16 without making the Elite Eight or beyond is 1 point. Just making an NCAA tournament, Matt, that gets you 2 points. And then we also considered being ranked in the top 25, right? So weeks ranked in the D3hoops.com top 25 poll gets you 1/20th of a point, 0.05 points. So these are the exact same weighting with some minor tweaks based on applicability for between Division I and Division III. With all due respect to Devin George and the Augsburg program, NBA draft picks is not really a relevant topic like it is in Division I, right? So we're not looking at things like that. So it's a little bit of a slim down list compared to Division I. But anyway, we wanted to be upfront. This is the methodology, and we're taking the inspiration from the CBS Sports article that applied it to Division I.
We're the D3 Datacast, so I love to see that we are doing this numerically. We're giving point values to things. Just one comment I will make. We love the D3hoops.com top 25 poll. That's been around for about 25 years or so now. So that's only about half of Division III's life cycle. So we felt good about introducing some amount of recency into the equation. So that exists in this top 25 poll. If teams were great before the poll existed, they're not getting bonus points. So it's really only in those last 25 years or so that we're giving bonus points. So that does introduce some recency here, which we felt okay about it. 0.05 points. So you had to be ranked for 100 weeks to get even 5 points. 60 weeks is like one Elite Eight run or one Final Four run or something like that. So hopefully it's not weighing the scales too much, but that's kind of gets teams that are in the conversation year in and year out for these last 25 years some extra points.
And Matt, I like the way this plays out too, because we've been talking about NPI, it seems like all summer, right? So here are our dial settings. We set the dials and we're going to let the process play out. And so don't blame us for the picks. We told you what the dials are going to be. What falls out of that, we're about to discuss. Matt, we're going to start the top 10 list at number.
We'll start at number 10.
Number 10, Matt, a program near and dear to our hearts. It's the Calvin Knights with a total of 123.2 points based on the point allocation we just discussed. The highlights here, Matt, Calvin is a two-time Division III national championship, winning the title in 1992 and 2000. Calvin has made a total of 4 Final Fours, 7 Elite Eights, 10 Sweet 16s in 23 tournament bids, and they have been ranked 104 weeks in the D3hoops.com top 25 poll.
Yeah, Calvin's just one of 10 active Division III programs who have more than one national championship, so 2 or more national championships, a program that expects to be around that 20-win mark every season. They had a stretch kind of in the mid-20 teens where they were kind of more like 500-ish, which was more of a shock. But recently, they've been on another hot streak, 3 years in a row, coming out of COVID kind of with 22 or more wins, a Sweet 16 in there, and an Elite Eight last season. And that was their last tournament appearance, was last year, making an Elite Eight run. So Calvin has some history. They have some recency here. And by the numbers, they came in as our number 10, just cracking this top 10 list, Calvin Knights.
Matt, let's go to number 9 here. Next on the list, number 9, Franklin and Marshall, the Diplomats, at 129.5 total points. Matt, no national champions. No national championships. They're the highest ranking program without a national championship. A little bit of a spoiler here. And only one of 3 without a championship that rank in the total top 20. So, of course, to find a top 10, we had to rank everyone. If anyone wants to see the full list of any program that had earned points in this system, you can go to d3datacast.com, check out the blog post associated with this episode, and we have the full list there.
Yeah, really shows the strength of the program that Franklin and Marshall has. That they are able to crack this list, becoming at number 9 without a national title. They just have had 5 Final Fours, a bunch of other deep runs. They've been ranked a bunch of times. It's been a really good program throughout the years, throughout the history of Division III, that they can make this list. And that's, shouts to legendary coach Glenn Robinson, who had, I think, 967 career wins with the Diplomats. He retired right before the 2019-2020 season. So he's been out of the picture at Franklin and Marshall for 4 or 5 years now. But he really built this into a national power, a really strong team. Just unfortunately, they didn't have that championship, but still number 9 all time for the Diplomats here. I think a really strong showing for Franklin and Marshall out of the Centennial Conference.
Yep, I love this, and it shows that there's a lot of different ways to accumulate points and a lot of different ways to get ranked here, Matt. It's not about just piling up championships, although obviously that's going to help you rack up points. Good to see Franklin and Marshall here. All right, number 8, Matt, Scranton. 131.05 points. Matt, another 2-time national champion, but it's been a while, 1976 and 1982 for Scranton. A total of 4 Final Fours, 6 Elite Eights, 12 Sweet 16s, a total of 29 tournament bids. And Matt, we talked about the recency. You look at the national championships, it's been a while, only 21 weeks ranked in the D3Hoops.com poll. So an indication that this resume has been set for quite a while. And it's, some older history that has really propelled Scranton into the number 8 spot here.
Yeah, Scranton was definitely one of the dominant teams in the early days of Division III, but I don't think that really means that they had fallen off in the meantime. It's just they haven't really had maybe the Final Four or the national championship dominance. Last year was an aberration for them. They were just 4-21, but that's been pretty rare. They've still historically been around that 19-20 win mark. So I think Scranton's still a really good program. It's not just, hey, way back in the day they used to be good. Scranton's still been good all the way through, but they did build a chunk of that resume, or at least that top 10 resume, maybe more in the 80s. Their last tournament appearance was just in 2023. They won a game, reached the second round. So they've been in the tournament pretty recently on. I think they're one of those teams that are in the mix year in and year out. But it's been a little while since their last Final Four. 1988 was the last time that they reached the final weekend.
That's number 8, Scranton. So next up, Matt, number 7 is Wisconsin Stevens Point, the Pointers at 132 points even, 4 national championships. Matt, they've had a couple really good runs here, back-to-back going with championships in 2004, 2005, as well as 2010 and 2015. That's every time they've been to the Final Four, Matt, they've won it. 4 championships, 4 Final Fours. They've made 6 Elite Eights, 10 Sweet 16s. In just 15 total tournament bids. But Stevens Point, they've been one of the preeminent programs here in the D3Hoops.com era, checking into 240 weekly polls.
Yeah, that 240 poll entrances, I think, is second on our entire list of programs that we had found. So they've been ranked a ton. They've been really good. That stretch of about 12 years from 2004 to 2015, winning 4 national championships. They were, I think that was an era in Division III of like dominant teams dominating, and they were definitely kind of king among those teams. They've had a lot of good history. They ran into maybe some NCAA trouble at the end of the 2010s, and they haven't quite bounced back from that. But this is the first WIAC team we see in this top 10 list. It's not going to be the last WIAC team we're going to see. That's a strong conference. UW Stevens Point has been great. They will be great in the future. I have no doubts that Kent Durbach's going to have that program right back in the national conversation pretty soon here. Their last tournament appearance was in 2018. They reached the Sweet 16 that year. So no stranger to tournaments, no strangers to deep runs. And yeah, if they're going to get to that Final Four, they're probably going to win it. So watch out for the Pointers come March. If they're making the tournament, they're going to be great.
It wasn't probably much of a spoiler, Matt, to say that they would not be the only WIAC team we see on this list. In fact, number 6, UW Platteville. Matt, we just saw Trine win the national championship in their first ever appearance in the Division III tournament. Wisconsin Platteville did that in 1991. That was the first of their 4 championships. They were really the team of the 90s, so to speak, in Division III basketball, winning championships in 91, 95, 98, and 99. Of course, those were the great teams that were under the leadership of Bo Ryan, who went on to coach the Wisconsin Badgers. A total of 5 Final Fours, 7 Elite Eights, 9 Sweet 16s, And again, Matt, just 15 overall tournament bids, so they've done some major damage in a relatively limited number of bids comparatively here with the rest of our list. And they have been ranked 113 weeks in the D3Hoops.com top 25 poll.
Yeah, right away, our second WIAC program. Spoiler alert, not our last WIAC program in the top 25 or in the top 10 here of programs all time. Wisconsin Platteville has been great. Like you said, a tremendous stretch in the 90s there of championships, but they've been great recently. And I can't believe that you mentioned Trine on Platteville's slide because that is way too soon, Zach. We saw Platteville in the Elite Eight last year. They played at Trine. They lost on a buzzer beater in overtime to the eventual national champions in a game that Platteville probably should have won. They were up by 3 points with like under 2 seconds left, and somehow that game slipped away. But Platteville has been good. They've basically been good all along. They're just a great program. Number 6 overall all time. And that resume, I think, just speaks for itself.
Absolutely. Yeah, a lot of interesting little factoids that now tie those Platteville and Trine programs together. All right, moving on, Matt. Let's change regions here. Moving over to number 5, we have Williams out of the NESCAC. And I think we need to note, Matt, there's a little bit of a tier break here because we had, 10 to 6 were ranked within about 10 points of each other, but we have a 17-point jump here from 6 to 5 with Williams earning a total number of points at 150.3. Just the one national championship, Matt, in 2003, but Williams has been to 8 Final Fours, 10 Elite Eights, 14 Sweet 16s out of 20 total tournament bids, and Matt, they've been ranked 206 weeks in the various D3Hoops.com polls.
Really strong program in a really strong conference. We're talking about the NESCAC every single year. And, a lot of programs would love to have just one national championship, but that's kind of probably how Williams feels sitting here. Maybe if that's a second championship, I don't know where they'd be on this list. They might be number 1 or number 2 or something like that. But they've just been a mainstay in March. They have had deep runs. They have that one national title. Whoever's coming out of the NESCAC, whoever wins that league or whoever's gotten an at-large bid out of that league is going to have a chance to make a run to the Final Four. Williams has done that on 8 occasions. They've been one of the most impressive programs year in and year out. Their last tournament appearance was just this past year, and they reached the Sweet 16 again. So we're talking about deep tournament runs on several occasions for Williams. They're no stranger to March, and the East are just a great program.
We went back-to-back with YX, Matt. Now it's time to go back-to-back with NESCAC's. Number 4, we have Amherst with a total of 154.85 points. Amherst has 2 national championships, 2007 and 2013, 7 Final Fours, 10 Elite Eights, 14 Sweet 16s. Matt, they've also been in the tournament 20 total times, matching their rivals at Williams. And they've been ranked a total of 237 times in D3Hoops.com polls over the years.
Yeah, Williams-Amherst, one of the biggest rivalries in Division III basketball, and they go back-to-back here on this list, number 3 and number 4. Amherst has that advantage. They got that second national title, 2 national championships in 2007 and 2013. Major props to legendary head coach David Hickson. We saw this past year get inducted to the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame. That's the Basketball Hall of Fame. So he's in there with like Larry Bird, and I think in his class was Dirk Nowitzki. Great recognition for a great coach of a great program. 826 career wins over 42 seasons. He's responsible for all of these numbers because I think even when he started at Amherst, the NESCAC had a rule that they weren't allowed to play in NCAA tournaments, and that wasn't really opened up until, if I recall, the early 1990s. So Williams and Amherst have done a lot of this work only in the last, whatever it is, like 30 years. So Coach Hickson had been there for like maybe, I don't know, like 10, 12, 15 years before they were even allowed to compete in those tournaments. And they've been great. So again, whoever's coming out of the NESCAC has a great shot at national recognition, national championships, Final Fours. Williams and now Amherst here have garnered a whole bunch of those.
Yep, it's a good point, Matt. Both Amherst and Williams made their first NCAA tournament appearances in 1994 because, of course, NESCAC gonna NESCAC. And so that makes them the second most recent first time entrant into the NCAA tournament on this list, Matt. Stevens Point made their first appearance in 1997.
Okay.
Moving along. What do you know? Another WIAC. Matt, Wisconsin Whitewater's number 3 on our list here with a total of 156.15 points. They have 4 national championships over the years in 1984, 1989, 2012, and 2014. They've been to a total of 6 Final Fours, Matt, including one just a couple years ago we saw them at. 6 Elite Eights, 8 Sweet 16s, 22 total tournament bids, and 203 weeks ranked in D3Hoops.com top 25 polls.
Yeah, one thing I didn't fully appreciate until we were doing some of this research for this episode was that Whitewater had a lot of early success in kind of more of the early days of D3 and have had more recent success in the latter stages. They've been kind of a strong program throughout, and as we've come to expect from all the WIACs, this is the third and final WIAC. So spoilers, if you're an Eau Claire fan or a River Falls fan, maybe you can click off this episode at this point. But Whitewater has been great from the start to the end. Yeah, give us the views. They've been a tremendous program all throughout Division III's history. We saw them in their last tournament appearance was just 2 seasons ago. They were in the Final Four. They made kind of maybe a surprise run to the Final Four. So they've, again, been no stranger to deep runs in March, as is commonplace from the WIAC champions or whoever comes out of kind of that WIAC region of the country. They're just as likely to get into the Final Four as anyone else.
Yeah, and while it looks like maybe there's a gap there with national championships, Matt, they were really good in the 90s as well. We talked about Platville being kind of the team of the 90s for Division III. Whitewater was knocked out by those Platville teams 3 times, right? So they met 4 times total in the 90s in the NCAA tournament, going 1-3 against Platville overall. So, they do check in on this list ahead of them, but it's kind of like a, if not for Platville, what maybe Whitewater would have done, as they were knocked out 3 times that decade by their conference rivals.
Well, and we've seen just about every decade there's been a program from the WIAC who's had like a couple of championships in that decade. We see 2 here for Whitewater in the 80s. We saw Platville in the 90s. We saw Stevens Point in the 2000s. It was Whitewater again and Stevens Point in the 2010s. So just a tremendous league, and they're deserving of 3 of the top 10 programs in D3 history, in D3 men's basketball history.
Moving on to our final 2, Matt. Number 2 is Illinois Wesleyan. 156.45 points, Matt. They were the national champions in 1997. The Titans have made a total of 6 Final Fours, 12 Elite Eights. They've been to the Sweet 16 19 times, made 26 total appearances in Division III tournaments, and have been ranked 189 times in the D3Hoops.com polls.
Yeah, and you mentioned the polls there at the end. I think Illinois Wesleyan has been ranked in 24 of the 25 seasons. They found themselves in the poll at some point. I think they're the only team that has been ranked in that many seasons. Only 2007, 2008, the 07-08 season was the only time that they were not ranked throughout the entire D3Hoops.com poll season.
At least once, right?
That's been incredible. No one else has been 24 out of 25 seasons. That just shows the strength of Illinois Wesleyan over those last 25 years. They've been in the conversation at all levels of the poll. 6 Final Fours there. They probably have to feel disappointed again, like with Williams only having 1 national championship. But again, there's a lot of programs that would love to have a national championship. Illinois Wesleyan, we saw them in their last tournament appearance, 2022, I believe. They were in the Elite Eight, lost kind of like a crazy finish to Wabash. They could have had a 7th Final Four there, kind of easily. But yeah, just a tremendous program, a tremendous conference in the CCIW there, the College Conference of Illinois and Wisconsin. And they've been, it feels like there's always a bunch of teams fighting at the top there, 1 or 2 or 3 strong programs. But one of those programs is almost always Illinois Wesleyan. And then it's maybe Wheaton, or it's maybe Elmhurst, or it's maybe North Central. Over the years, that's changed. But it feels like what's been constant, or at least been constant in like the 20 years since I've been following Division III basketball, is that it's probably Illinois Wesleyan and then someone else in that conference.
All right, Matt, let's take a little breath. We've covered them all in the top 10. Going to leave a little air here for everyone to think about What's their guess for number one? Who is it? Number one, as ranked by our dial settings, the number one men's basketball program of all time in Division III, Matt, the Wittenberg Tigers, with 167.5 total points. Matt, we talked a little bit earlier about maybe a tier break. We have a jump of over 10 points. We've seen a lot, of teams grouped closely together here, a 10-point gap here at the top. So I think you could say Wittenberg stands as a tier on their own. They're number one, Matt. Also just won national championship coming in 1977. So it has been a while. But you don't get to number one without a solid body of work over time. They've been to 7 Final Fours, 12 Elite Eights, 17 Sweet 16s, an all-time high, tied with another program we'll talk about later, number of tournament bids at 30, and they've been ranked 150 weeks in D3hoops.com polls.
Yeah, when you talk about just programs historically in Division III that win and win a lot, it's Wittenberg. They're always on the lists of like teams that have won the most games all time. It's like Wittenberg and Illinois Wesleyan, I think, are maybe the top 2 teams, and they're 1-2 in the list. And like total D3 wins aren't even one of our categories, but it's just it's tournament success, it's time in the polls, and Wittenberg certainly has that over the years. Another program, 7 Final Fours, kind of surprised that it's only been 1 national championship, but that's just such a reign of dominance over the years for Wittenberg that makes them our number 1 team by this metric in Division III basketball history. They've been great. I think, though, their last tournament, I think, was the 2020 tournament that was shut down due to COVID, and they were still alive in the Sweet 16. So they're one of these teams that are left saying, what if the pandemic hadn't hit? What if we were able to play another round, another 2 rounds, and seen that tournament to the end? What could have happened? Wittenberg had a really strong team that year. They were really good. They were set to play another game when that tournament got canceled. Haven't quite been at that level the last few years coming out of the pandemic, but one of those programs that's right there in the mix, and they've been historically right there on top of the NCAC or, with a couple other teams in the North Coast Athletic Conference. But just year in and year out, you can count on Wittenberg being a solid program. They're a team you want to schedule because you know they're going to be good. It's just how good are they going to be?
So that's the top 10, Matt. Once again in review, it's Calvin, Franklin and Marshall, Scranton, Wisconsin Stevens Point, Wisconsin Platteville, Williams, Amherst, Wisconsin Whitewater, Illinois Wesleyan, and Wittenberg. And Matt, like we mentioned, we had to do the full analysis to come up with a top 10. And so we wanted to take the time to discuss some other honorable mentions or some other notables. I'm sure there's a few programs out there that fans who've been following Division III for a while might think, well, what about so-and-so? Or, where's this team or that team? All right, so we can talk through a few of those. Let's start with the team that checked in at number 12. Matt, that's North Park. Their 5 national championships are most all time, so that's kind of what makes them notable. They're the Division III men's basketball leader in national championships, and that was good enough to get them number 12 on this list. Not quite there to the top 10.
Yeah, as it calls out, most championships all time, but those championships did almost all the work of getting them to number 12. They didn't have enough to kind of push them over the edge, I think. I think what's interesting is I believe the Vikings also have 5 Elite Eight appearances. So every time they've made a deep tournament run, whatever you want to call a deep tournament run, they've ended up, putting another banner up in their gym. And actually also only Sweet 16s. So it's been like deep run or bust for North Park. They've had a lot of their success, or all their championships came in a stretch that was from the mid to late 70s to the early 80s, I believe. And they had a lot of years in like the 2000s, 2010s. They were kind of wandering in the wilderness. They were not one of the stronger programs in Division III. So they have a lot of history, a lot of championships. Number 12 is great, but they just didn't have the total resume to really crack our top 10.
They have 10 total NCAA tournament appearances, Matt. In our top 10, no one had fewer than 15.
Yeah. Yep.
So there you go. All right, Matt, let's talk about a program that is certainly relevant to Division III history, but is no longer in Division III, and that's St. Thomas in Minnesota. They are the highest ranked team that is no longer in Division III. Matt, you do the analysis. They came out number 14 with 117.3 points.
Yeah, and St. Thomas was a team that was on fire even when they left Division III. You kind of think I think they moved to D1 kind of starting in 2021. If they had had that extra 3-4 years in Division III, they could have continued to add to this resume. Maybe they would have cracked our top 10. Unfortunately, the MIAC no longer wanted them, and they felt that Division I was going to be a better spot for them. But St. Thomas just had an incredible run in like the 2000s, 20 teens, into the 2020s of just being one of the most dominant programs in Division III basketball. And if it wasn't for a move to Division I think there's no reason to expect that that would have ended anytime soon.
And then, Matt, let's take a look at number 17. This was maybe one of the surprises for me as to where they ranked a little bit lower than I would have probably expected, and that's Worcester, number 17, with 112.45 total points. They're the all-time leader in appearances in D3Hoops.com top 25 polls. We talked about Illinois Wesleyan holding the record, being there at least once in 24 out of 25 years. But in terms of individual polls, Worcester is the all-time leader there. But even with that little bit of recency, pushing them forward, not enough to crack them even into the top 15. I was a little bit surprised by that.
Yeah, I was too, because I think all the time I've been following Division III basketball, Worcester has been one of those teams in the national conversation, winning 20 games or more just about every single year. But it's really tough to crack that top 10, them not having a championship, a national championship to their name, I think kind of does hurt them. You compare them to a program like Calvin, who just was the last team in our top 10. And if you look at like Sweet 16s, Elite Eights, Final Fours, national championships, Worcester is at or just below the level of Calvin. So it's really hard, I think, to crack that top 10 without a national championship. We saw Franklin and Marshall do that, but they were the only program to do so. So a program like Worcester that didn't really have that to bring them over the top, even though they've been in and around the national discussion, just couldn't quite get there at the end. But still top 20, definitely one of the programs to talk about in Division III history.
And number 19 is Hope, Matt, with 106 total points. We talked about Wittenberg being tied for the most tournament appearances with 30, and it's Hope that they're tied with. Hope's had 30 tournament appearances, tied for most all time. But a little bit similar in terms of Worcester. They've had a bunch of success and recognition in top 25 polls, but don't have that national championship and maybe haven't done as much in those 30 appearances as some of these other teams higher above them, and so they check in at number 19.
Yeah, I think you said it well. They're in a similar position to Worcester. Either of these programs, if one of those runs had gone deep and ended in a national championship, or maybe one additional run on top of everything that ended in a national championship, and you're probably talking about those teams as easily in the top 10. Unfortunately, they were just missing that criteria piece. Their point totals don't quite add up to the others, but still solid programs year in and year out. They're in the tournament discussion. They're in the top 25 discussion. Programs that throughout the course of Division III, as often as not, are in the national conversation.
And then one more notable here, Matt, and I'm going to guarantee that it's not one that someone had come to mind, right? They were not wondering about this school, but let's point them out for a little bit of fun here. And that is the first ever Division III men's basketball national champion back in 1975. Matt, Lemoyne Owen checked in at number 44 with 49 points. As I mentioned, they were the first ever national champion after the creation of Division III, and they hold the distinction of being the highest ranked team to never appear in the D3Hoops.com top 25 poll. Well, and that's because, Matt, they're not around anymore. They're not in Division III. They made their last Division III tournament appearance in 1983. They are currently a Division II school, so they've moved on from Division III to Division II. Have skipped the entire D3Hoops.com era. But still, they're checking in as a top 50 program all time.
Yeah, incredible. I mean, you win a championship and you have a little bit other success, then you're going to maybe be in the top 50. Incredible to look back at the history and recognize the first champion. Unfortunately, they missed D3Hoops.com by about 15 years or so they could not be included in that. Zach, while we're talking about honorable mentions, there's just one other team I wanted to shout out here because we talked about North Park being number 12. But the number 11 team, the first team out of our list, I do want to call out, and that is Wash U. A very strong program, had 2 championships back-to-back, 2008, 2009. They were really, really close to Calvin for that last spot in the top 10. And if you look at their numbers, like Sweet 16s, tournament appearances, Final Fours, it's really close to Calvin's numbers. Calvin just beat them out by like less than 1 point. I think it was really close.
Half a point.
So the Wash U Bears were very nearly a top 10. And I wanted to call them out in the honorable mentions here because another great program that has had a mix of success, historical and recent.
Absolutely. So that's the list. Again, if you want to see the full list, the full rankings of every team who earned points through this methodology, go to d3datacast.com and find the episode blog post. We got the full list there. Enjoy. If you disagree, make your own list and let us know.
Yeah, put down in the comments below, like, who do you think you would include in your top 10, or who are you surprised to not see included or not see talked about here? A lot of good programs in Division III. So the whole top 25, the whole top 50 are good programs. We only really focused on the top 10, so a lot of good programs out there. But let us know below the teams that you represent and where you think that they should be ranked in the Division III landscape.
And that leaves one thing, Matt. We got to say goodbye. We got to say thank you to our supporters on Patreon. Matt, we have a brand new Great Job Team supporter, Patrick McGrail. Thank you. Have to give the name shout out there for a new supporter. Love to see it. And like we said, Matt, we're going to be heading into in-season time after this. This episode's our last for the off-season. We're going to take a little bit of a break, and then it's going to hit October, and we're going to be in-season mode. I'm ready to go.
I'm ready to go too, Zach. It was fun to talk about these D3 programs. We're going to see all these programs hit the floor in November. Well, not St. Thomas and not Lemoyne-Olin, but everyone else we'll see hit the floor this year. Excited for the season to start, Zach. We'll be covering it all here on D3 Datacast and d3datacast.com. But for now, we're going to say, good job, Hoops.